Welcome to the Accepted Authority, where we help you solve a common growth challenge. With me, as always, is Greg Rowith. G'day, Greg.
G'day, Andy. Coming to you from Auckland today. We're having a bit of time here, so looking forward to catching up with a few friends and family here, and but being able to participate on our podcast from here today is pretty exciting stuff.
Wonderful. We'll say hello to my home city there for us. Take good care of it. I'm sure she'll treat you well. So today, what we wanted to talk about is we wanted to focus on a particular topic around content. So do you ever get the feeling that you don't know what content to create for your consulting firm? I've found that really it all depends on how you approach content. And what we're going to do today is really go through some of the frustrations that we feel and some of the mistakes that we see consulting firms owners and their team make when it comes to creating content, how to go about it, and ultimately gives you some tools to be able to use when you next go and do your execution phase or your planning phase. So it's a topic that Greg and I have had a lot of experience with, a lot of trials and different approaches. So we'd love to share what we've learned along the way. So Greg, how about we just start with that initial concept? So why do we feel like it's an issue, or it's a frustration for a lot of consulting organizations? Why don't we know what content to create?
And I think it is an issue. And it is an issue because people approach it in a bit of an ad hoc fashion. We know that we want to have content. We want to be visible in the market. So creating content, we're starting to understand, is the best way to do that. And ideally in a non-promotional way, but in a way that positions us as an authority. So, probably the main challenge, and I've definitely been guilty of this myself, is to come to a week and think, what am I going to post this week? Or even, what am I going to post today? What am I going to talk about? What am I going to, so what's the deal? It's that reactiveness, which, comes about from being busy and putting, content creation down the list of activities that we want to do until, it's one of those last minute things that we come up with. So then it's, what do we talk about? And that, usually ends up as a bit of a disaster, because we typically, even if we create reasonable content, it doesn't have much context to, creating a story or creating a methodology where we're actually attracting clients. And, really that's the aim of creating content. Sure, we want to be visible, but the only purpose for that is that we're attracting quality clients. Yeah. So just creating content for the sake of content is, there's not much point to that. So
yes,
doing it reactively creates the issue, which means that ideally, we come with a plan and we come with a strategy, related to that plan, and we come with content created, and ideally, even if it's a day-to-day or, doesn't have to be content every day, but whatever you decide is the schedule for your content creation, to have it planned out, mapped out in advance, so that you're not being reactive and that you know what you're talking about day by day. And ideally, though, you're creating your content well in advance and doing it in a batch format, I think works best for me. So batching your content, so it's got continuity, it's got context, and it's specific around a strategy that you're employing.
So what covered there, Greg, really the frustrations that you might be feeling as well. There's a lack of time, or we can't find time to create it, so therefore there's no consistency. So obviously what we want is we want a way that content gets created and scheduled and published regularly for us. Also, a lack of return on effort. So we're talking about how content, really, the whole idea is, yes, to be visible, but we want to make sure that it actually converts into inquiries. And I'd like to also add on that layer is we're not sure about what content actually works, because what I see a lot of consulting firms do is they create content for promotion's sake, and it's always about a product or a service, and the work hasn't been done to actually think about a layer deeper and say, well, unless someone is right at that moment looking to buy that product, we need to be, as consumers, we need to be educated about a particular problem. So I think when we're doing our planning, it's really getting very clear about those problems to start with, and then that gives you a base. So if you're uncertain about what content to create, then the best advice that I could give is do a brainstorm and think about perhaps the top 6 problems that they are facing right now. Do your brainstorming, go deep with who they are and what they're about, and then use that as your base. And then what you'll find is that in your firm, you've probably got some other subject matter experts that can who talk to the clients all the time, and that will give you some ideas. So having a proven content plan is absolutely the first step. So if we talk about if we just go a bit deeper with this, Greg, and this will really help, I think, if you're considering about what content to create. There's different types of styles, if you like, that work really well. And when we say styles, I mean things like, what perspective can we assume? So what are we actually, what's the approach? And usually it stems from educating and coaching and being seen as that authority. So when you come from a place of abundance where you remove your fear of the fact that if I talk about my IP, someone's going to steal it. That's the first thing that you need to park, because people are going to latch onto you if they can see that you are talking about the problems that they solve, and obviously things that we all know about, starting with why. So having your purpose worked out, that's sort of in a separate bucket over here. We're just talking about, you've got that figured out. You really need to come from it from a coaching point of view, because that's what you're doing to your clients, right, Greg? We're professionally helping them, and we need to be thinking and acting and producing and creating like a coach. Tell me about your thoughts around that coaching concept and how that works in content.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what you've talked about there, as far as the temptation to be promoting ourselves or have self-promoting content, the objective of that is that we want to prove that we can actually help our clients. And one of the people that is really considered an expert in this space, Frank Kern, has a saying that we prove that we can help people by actually helping them. So in our content, rather than making it all about us, if we make it all about our client, and as you said, parking the idea that if we're giving away our IP, people are going to steal it and do it. No, giving away our IP or providing content that actually helps people proves that we can actually help them, which is overcoming one of the biggest challenges and objections that our clients or potential clients have. So giving people content that actually helps them solve a problem really takes a big step forward in that credibility and trust factor that is obviously one of the reasons that we're creating content. But I think as to what sort of content to create, we need to think of the buyer's journey and base our content around the buyer's journey, and probably looking at that in 3 phases of when clients are thinking that they might have a problem or starting to understand that they have a problem. Our content needs to be around that conversation and creating content that actually gets their attention. A bit further along in that journey, they're starting to look for solutions. So our content then needs to be around providing solutions and nurturing those people that we've already captured attention of. And finally, we want people to take action when they're narrowing down their options and starting to think about who can I get to help. We need action creating content. So conversion content, in other words, where we're getting people to take action, which ideally is give us a call or make an inquiry.
Yes.
So having those three styles of content that we're thinking about, not just providing information all the time, and that makes us visible, but doesn't actually get results in terms of people taking action.
That's a really good point, Greg. I found in my professional journey, initially I was focused purely on the educational content, and I found that there would be some elements where we would get some inquiry. So we're talking about clients as well, but then I realized that you have to actually supplement that with the asking for help if they need some help, because you can't assume that everyone, just like you can't assume that everyone is in the informational phase. They're just looking for information. There will be a small element who are actually interested in it. They're along the buyer's journey. They're the end of the buyer's journey. So what you've said there is gold. We want content that is going to be able to satisfy the needs of all the different types of people in the buyer's journey. One other aspect that you mentioned there, Greg, is the need to be the guide. And I've seen this in different reports in professional services where they talk about in 2 years' time, the people will buy from B2B standpoint through the digital space. Gartner, we reference them. They have a great report that talks about that. So if you think about your content as being the guide, it's almost like if you think about an online shopper, or maybe you go to, you want to buy a new suit, and this is thinking about me in maybe a couple of weeks, I've got a speaking course that I'm going on, and I need to ensure that I look the part and I'm presented as well as I can, and all the colors match and all those sorts of things. So if we take that example, then that person who's going to help me is going to be a guide. They're going to be able to talk to me about different choices and what's going to work for me and the look and the feel. And so if we think about that with our content, you're really initially being the guide. You're talking about the things as we talk often in this podcast, we're entering the conversation. So if you know that your potential clients are considering different ideas and different problems, and they're looking for information, then you need to be the one that provides those sorts of thoughts. Maybe you're providing some insights about where you think the year is headed, for example. So being the guide is going to get you in the door, at least to that conversation. Because people, it's like the law of reciprocity. If you help them, then they feel like, okay, I'm a little bit indebted because Greg has shared this amazing webinar, or Greg spent 10 minutes shooting a video that goes deep into a problem that really talks about where I'm at. And I've found that's the case too when you see people in professional services, and they have obviously taken the time to really understand who they are wanting to serve, and then they go deep with those problems and they offer great value. Of course you feel compelled because they've done all this work to help you get there. They've guided you along the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the name of our show, becoming the accepted authority by providing that guidance. And the Gartner reports and other reports. There's a LinkedIn survey that was done a few years ago that also says that the first person to provide that guidance, or first organisation to provide guidance or to provide advice becomes the authority that people want to know more from. So in terms of what sort of content do we create, our strategy should be to become that accepted authority for our potential clients, and provide the content that does guide them through that buyer's journey. Because if they're, doing the research online, if we're not creating that content, our competitors, if they're not doing it now, they will be in the next 2 years. People are finding the guidance and the reassurance online. If we're not there, and if we're not creating the right content, they're finding it from someone else and not us. So, our choice is to be that accepted authority, or to create the content that gives us that position in our potential clients' minds, and they're following our guidance. And it's not that we should expect to win every client, because part of that content is about creating the content that our ideal clients can relate to and resonate with. And some clients out there, or potential clients, won't resonate with us. They'll actually prefer someone else, and that's okay. We don't have to get all down because they chose someone else. But the reality is, if we're doing this the right way, we will attract enough clients that resonate with us and are the right clients for us, that ultimately they're coming to us because they see our content, they like it, they see us as an authority that's right for them, and make that choice to work with us.
Fantastic. And I feel like the first third of your speech just now could be an advert for this podcast. So we'll ask Sarah to look into that for us, because that was articulated beautifully. And that's exactly what we're trying to say here. The content thinking is really around us being helpful, people are choosing us. And you'll find that it'll take if it's doing its job, you'll attract clients that are maybe 70%, but the more that you continue to have these sales conversations, then you'll start and you'll hone your content engine, and you'll just narrow it down even more. That's what I've found. The content that I've created started off broad from a specialism point of view, and as over time we've narrowed it down. So I know that will continue to do its job. So that's fantastic, Greg. One of the things that we'll just mention there, so we understand that we need to create content that's to be the guide. So let's just go one step beyond that and think about, okay, so what does it actually look like? So probably and we're talking about channels and things like that. I just want to suggest one thing around the channel idea. Consider the rule of the 5 1s, which means that if we are completely clear with having one target market, one solution, one problem that we're solving, and we're doing it on one channel, then we can actually test to see if it works and measure that. So be very clear. Don't get tempted to do 10 different things, which is often some of the advice out there. You need to be on every single social media platform. No, you have to also manage and create and respond to all of this. So if you're a firm that has maybe up to 20 or 30 staff, you're a 5-person firm, 10-person firm, then you've just got to get really clear on one particular channel. If we're just talking about lead gen and lead nurture, for example, so generating inquiries, but also keeping the visibility there. So in terms of what that might look like, what content to create, we know that the type of content that gets the most engagement, can you guess?
What about video?
Yeah, it's still video. And the rise of like TikTok, obviously YouTube's been there for yonks, but also seeing how that works on platforms like LinkedIn, even video emails. So video is one element that you could consider a way to create content at scale. Now, you probably do things like webinars, or maybe you've had events, or maybe you've had conversations with clients. There's multiple ways that you can capture video. But the other aspect that I think is really helpful to think about, and this goes back to the coaching element, is using models, which we talk about fairly often. But I still think it's the most powerful way to get a message across, that it can be a complex idea, but make it really simple. So having video as one component, if you can, because it's scalable and it's high impact and it's easy to do. The other aspect is the model element where you might have already that information in house. So then it's being able to translate it into circles, into triangles, into sort of simple diagrams. Because I see it all the time on LinkedIn, but also I do a lot of work sort of professionally to continue to upskill myself around models when I'm shooting my videos and my webinars and my information that I want to share. It's going to be centered around a model. So what's your take on, say, maybe starting with those two types of content, the video and the model, Greg?
Yeah. Well, I think if I can take the second one first, using models is a really great way to simplify how you describe things. I mean, a picture says 1,000 words. So having your description of what you're saying in a model, enables that communication of that concept in a very clear manner. So that's a brilliant way to transfer information. How you do that, and I think video is the most likely way that people are going to see you from multiple perspectives, because they're seeing you, they're picking up your personality, yes, the way you talk, how you look, which is pretty engaging. But a lot of people aren't great with a camera. A lot of people aren't yes, comfortable with video. So don't let that hold you back. Text is fine. Text still gets read. So it's maybe a degree less effective than video, but if you're much better at writing than speaking off the cuff or even speaking into a camera, then use written posts rather than video posts. So I think, and ultimately you want to try to repurpose your content, because some people, their modality is, they read more, or they find reading more interesting and relevant than watching a video. So
yes, good point.
What I try to do is create, or repurpose my content, create it on video, but then transcribe it and present it in text format as well, so that you're catering for different tastes of different people.
Yeah, I love it, and that's a really important point. Don't feel like you have to be on video just because that's what everyone says that you need to be. All we're suggesting is that it's an easy way to scale it. And what I've also found is the good news is the more you do something, the better you get at it. And there's obviously great organizations that help you with presenting on camera, presenting anyway. So I think what Greg said there is really valid. Ensure that you still don't let fear stop you. It's all about getting things out there and getting feedback on that. I think as we sort of wrap it up there, Greg, any sort of final thoughts around content, what to create? I think we've covered some really good things there.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, just going back to where we started, having a strategy, creating a plan for your content, mapping out the sort of content in those three formats of attention-getting content, nurturing content, and conversion-type content, so that you are able to follow the client through that buying journey, but also really having that on the basis of understanding your client's biggest problems and focusing your content around providing advice and help and actionable content as well, so that people actually see the value in what you're doing. And if you can help them take one step on that journey through free content, they're more likely to come back and say, well, wow, you've got me this far. How can you help me get further?
Excellent. Yeah, fantastic summary. And just adding to that, Greg, I think you just need to commit to something and just do it. That's the other takeaway. Don't get stymied by, it has to be perfect.
Yeah.
If you're an analytical personality, you just have to get out there. And I'm speaking from someone who is by nature analytical. You just have to get it out there, and you'll you'll get the results, because that's how we learn. That's how we test to see if things are working. That's how we see if a message is resonating. So
That's right.
thank you, Greg.
Consistency trumps perfection.
Of course.
All day long. Yeah. So one thing we didn't perhaps mention enough is consistency of posting. Doesn't matter if it's daily or weekly, but as long as you're consistent about what you're doing and it's there regularly, then people, it's another trust factor for people to see.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for joining us on the Accepted Authority. Now, Greg, where can we find you online?
Yes, we'll do a search for Greg Roworth on LinkedIn or Facebook, or go straight to my website at businessflightpath.com.
Fantastic. You can find me at Andrew Marmont on LinkedIn, or our website is concurve.com.au. This has been the Accepted Authority. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.